Module 1, Good Manufacturing Practice, Introduction to GMP 1, Medicinal Products. About this module. Follow the prompts on the screen to navigate through the module. Quick quiz questions appear throughout the module. These are simple knowledge tests and are not scored or used in your final assessment. Final assessment at the end of the module is your opportunity to demonstrate your knowledge, and you will receive a score on these questions. All answers have appeared in the learning material. Navigation tip. Screens are interactive. Navigation prompts may occur at the top or bottom of the screen. Objectives. The objectives of this e-learning presentation are to introduce good manufacturing practice, GMP, understand the major aspects of GMP, learn the 10 golden rules of GMP. Definitions. GMP, good manufacturing practice. cGMP, current good manufacturing practice. GCLP, good control laboratory practice. GAMP, good automated manufacturing practice. GXP, abstract term used to cover good practices in general within the pharmaceutical environment. GDP, good distribution practice. Quick Quiz 1. Drag and drop. Match the correct answer. Note, fit the puzzle pieces together correctly. Who regulates the GMP rules? The governments of different countries have formed regulatory authorities to make GMP regulations about how pharmaceutical and life science products are made. The International Council for Harmonization of Technical Requirements for Pharmaceuticals for Human Use, ICH, brings together these regulatory authorities and pharmaceutical industry to harmonize regulations and enforcements. The PICS organization leads the international development, implementation, and maintenance of harmonized GMP standards. The government regulatory authorities, like the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, in the USA, perform audits of manufacturing sites to check that GMP regulations are being followed. The regulatory authorities also provide a framework for the regulation of medical goods to ensure the quality, safety, and efficacy of medicines and ensure the quality, safety, and performance of medical devices. Risk-based approach. The regulatory framework is based on a risk management approach designed to ensure public health and safety. At the same time, the framework frees industry from unnecessary regulatory burden. However, the framework should not be seen as an alternative to compliance with regulations. What is good manufacturing practice? The acronym GMP is used internationally to describe a set of principles and procedures which, when followed by manufacturers of medical goods, help ensure that the products manufactured will have the required quality. GMP is the part of quality management which ensures that products are consistently produced and controlled to the quality standards appropriate to their intended use and as required by the marketing authorization, clinical trial authorization, or product specification. GMP is concerned with both production and quality control, plus product and process design. A basic tenet of GMP is that quality cannot be tested into a batch of product, but must be built into each batch of product during all stages of the manufacturing process. What is good manufacturing practice? Continued. The GMP rules have their origins in the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic laws that were passed in the USA in 1938. These laws mandated that new drugs must be safe and that manufacturing methods, facilities, and controls be adequate. The laws were introduced in response to the elixir sulfonilamide crisis that killed 107 people, mostly children. The GMP rules were further strengthened after the Winthrop Chemical Company produced sulfothiazole tablets contaminated with phenobarbital in 1940, which killed or injured over 300 people. The Clothier Report in the UK, based upon the Evans medical disaster, prompted the first UK Orange Guide, which formed the basis of the current EU GMP and PICS regulations. The GMP rules are there to ensure that drugs and medical devices are safe and effective. Overview of quality assurance. Quality by design. A systematic approach to development that begins with predefined objectives and emphasizes product and process understanding and process control based on sound science and quality risk management. Products must be designed and developed with GMP and GCLP in mind. Overview of quality assurance. Continued. Manufacturing. Production and control operations should be clearly specified. cGMP compliant procedures should be made for the manufacturer, supply, and use of the correct starting and packaging materials. All necessary controls on intermediate products and any other in-process controls and validations must be carried out. Overview of quality assurance. Continued. Finished product. The finished product should be correctly processed and checked according to the defined procedures. Products should not be sold or supplied before an authorized person has certified that each production batch has appropriate quality. Products should be stored, distributed, and subsequently handled so that quality is maintained throughout their shelf life. Overview of quality assurance. Continued. Self-inspection. There should be a procedure for self-inspection which regularly appraises the effectiveness and applicability of the quality assurance system. Overview of quality assurance. Continued. Responsibilities. Managerial responsibilities should be clearly specified and documented. What does the Quality Control Department do? Quality Control, QC, shall ensure that raw materials and manufactured products are released after verification of documents as per internal release procedures and under proper authorization. QC is responsible for sampling, specifications, testing, data reporting and data integrity, as well as the organization, documentation, and release procedures which ensure that the necessary and relevant tests are carried out before product release. The foundations of quality control. The foundations of quality control are based on having adequate facilities, trained personnel. Procedures. Ensure approved procedures are available for sampling of raw materials, self-inspection of at least personnel, premises including personnel facilities, maintenance of buildings and equipment, storage of starting materials and finished products, equipment, production and in-process controls, QC, documentation, sanitation and hygiene, validation and revalidation programs, calibration of instruments or measurement systems, recall procedures, complaint management, labels control, results of previous self-inspections and any corrective steps taken. Testing starting materials, testing packaging materials, testing intermediate, bulk, and finished products, and, where appropriate, monitoring environmental conditions. Testing. Test methods must be available and validated. Starting materials. Samples of starting materials, packaging materials, intermediate products, bulk products, and finished products should be drawn and tested by quality control. Records. Records should be maintained which demonstrate that all the required sampling, inspections, and testing procedures have been performed. Ensure you record and investigate any deviations. Finished product. The finished product should contain active ingredients complying with the qualitative and quantitative composition of the marketing authorization. Finished product should be of the purity required and enclosed within their proper container and correctly labeled. Records should be made of the results of inspection and that testing of materials, intermediate, bulk, and finished products was formally assessed against specifications. Product assessment should include a review and evaluation of relevant production documentation and an assessment of any deviations from specified procedures. Release. No batch of product can be released for sale or supply prior to certification by an authorized person that it is in accordance with the requirements of the license. Sampling. Sufficient samples of starting materials and products should be retained to permit full release testing twice, with the exception of sterility testing. GMP and the law. Regulatory authorities have the power to stop manufacturers from producing, stop the sale of products, close down the plant and facilities, suspend or revoke manufacturing licenses, prevent products from entering a country, bring charges which could result in fines and/or jail sentences. The 9 sections of the GMP guidelines. Experience has taught regulators that it's not just the steps involved in product manufacture that are important. Good manufacturing practice must be a holistic process that controls everything that can impact product quality. It's much more about the best way to run a business than purely about manufacturing products. There are 9 key aspects that need to be controlled in order for GMP to be in place. 1. Quality management. 2. Personnel. 3. Premises and equipment. 4. Documentation. 5. Production. 6. Quality control. 7. Contract manufacturing and analysis. 8. Complaints and product recall. 9. Self-inspection. Quality management. Introduction. Quality management is the responsibility of senior management, but it requires the participation and commitment of all staff. International standards. Regulatory guidance on quality management comes from ICH Q10 Pharmaceutical Quality System that has been harmonized and accepted by all the major authorities worldwide. Implementation of ICH Q10 throughout governance. Quality management is the high-level international standards. Regulatory guidance on quality management comes from ICH Q10 Pharmaceutical Quality System that has been harmonized and accepted by all the major authorities worldwide. Implementation of ICH Q10 throughout the product lifecycle should facilitate innovation and continual improvement and strengthen the link between pharmaceutical development and manufacturing activities. Governance. Quality management is the high-level governance of quality by a company. It envelops GMP, quality assurance, quality control, product quality review, PQR, and quality risk management, QRM. Product quality review. Product quality reviews are regular, periodic, or rolling reviews of all licensed medicinal products, including export-only products. Regulatory authorities require annual product reviews, APRs, as formal reports for each licensed product each year. They are conducted with the objective of verifying the consistency of the existing process, the appropriateness of current specifications for both starting materials and finished product, highlighting any trends, and identify product and process improvements. Quality risk management. Quality risk management is a systematic process for the assessment, control, communication, and review of risks to the quality of the product. Risk must be assessed based on scientific knowledge and impact on patient safety. Level of effort of risk management needs to be commensurate with the level of risk. Quick Quiz 2. Select the best answer and click Submit. Which of the following situations would cause an auditor to question if a company had enough staff? A. There were a large number of QC samples awaiting analysis, some dated from previous weeks. B. The QA manager had a large pile of documents needing to be approved and signed. C. The receiving area in the warehouse was crowded with goods waiting to be booked in. D. All of the above. E. None of the above. Personnel. QA systems and adherence to GMP guidelines relies exclusively on people. Personnel. Continued. Having the right number of personnel. The GMP guidelines recognize how critical people are to ensuring product quality. To meet GMP requirements, it's essential to have the right number of people and that they have the right qualifications and experience to do the job. To meet these requirements, it's essential that what right means has been identified for every function and process. Personnel. Continued. Personnel training. The GMP guidelines recognize that training is very important. During an audit, an auditor might ask to see competency matrices, identifying skills and training required for each role in the organization, training records to show when someone is trained and what they were trained on. These records must be kept for everyone who works in a GMP area, including contractors, cleaners, suppliers' representatives who visit frequently, such as equipment service engineers. Personnel. Continued. Contractors. Contractors, such as salespeople and cleaners, are a common source of noncompliance. It is critical that contracting companies supply only GMP-trained personnel to work in production areas. Untrained staff, filling in for someone who is away, will not understand how much they can impact product quality. Example, a piping contractor installing a filter housing unknowingly left waste materials in the water system. The system supplied sterile water for the manufacture of injectable drugs. However, the water system would contain an online TOC or a conductivity meter to detect and dump unsterile water before it gets into the distribution loop. Also, QC tests on the water would detect such a problem before any drugs were released. Personnel. Continued. The GMP essentials. Because personnel are such a critical part of GMP, the GMP guidelines specify that all staff must have the education, experience, and training to perform their duties. Documentary evidence of this must be maintained, including resumes, professional qualifications, and training records. An organizational chart is mandatory and can be subject to auditing. The responsibilities of each position must be defined and documented. The head of production and quality control must be independent from each other. Good personal hygiene is critical. Staff must be trained and equipped to ensure good personal hygiene. Personnel. Continued. Good hygiene. It is critical that staff reduce the risk of introducing infections and bacteria into the area where products are being made. This includes reporting open sores or any illness to their supervisor, appropriate washing of their hands, no eating, drinking, chewing, or smoking, and no storage of food, drink, smoking materials, or personal medication in production and storage areas. All personnel entering the manufacturing areas should wear clothing appropriate for the area and the operations to be carried out. Unhygienic practices within the manufacturing areas or other areas where product may be adversely affected should be forbidden. Premises and equipment. Manufacturing equipment. Ensure manufacturing equipment is designed, located, and maintained to suit its intended use. Is designed so that it can be easily and thoroughly cleaned. Has procedures for how and when to clean each piece of equipment that can impact product quality. Has procedures that clearly state who is responsible for the cleaning and have cleaning records. Premises and equipment. Continued. Design. The GMP guidelines ensure that manufacturing facilities are designed to minimize product contamination and mix-ups. For example, using coved ceilings, floors, and corners within manufacturing areas minimizes debris and thus bacterial accumulation. Machines should be located to allow easy access for regular maintenance. Dedicated lines or facilities, i.e. physical separation, should be used when manufacturing products that have high cross-contamination potential. Premises and equipment. Continued. Equipment placement. Example, in one company, the maintenance schedule for a piece of production equipment required the oil to be changed and 55 sensor points to be checked every 3 months. During an audit, the auditor discovered that this was only being done during the annual shutdown period. Why? The machine had been installed very close to the wall. The maintenance engineer could only access the back of the machine when it was moved away from the wall. This could only be done during the annual shutdown when a mobile crane was available to lift the machine. Premises and equipment. Continued. Premises design. Modern warehouses at commercial manufacturing sites are totally automated and their status and location are controlled by an enterprise management system. A modern warehouse is divided into a receiving area and a storage area in which there are specific areas to store rejected, recalled, or returned materials or products. Optimally, rejected product would be kept in a caged area. Again, the aim is to prevent contamination and mix-ups. It would be very easy for a batch of recalled products to be accidentally shipped out to customers if the recalled products were not kept physically separate from the final products in the warehouse. QC labs are separate from the production areas. Premises and equipment. Continued. Facilities. The facilities should be designed and equipped to prevent entry of pests or animals. Steps should be taken to prevent entry of unauthorized personnel. Where special storage conditions are required, e.g., temperature, humidity, these conditions should be provided, checked, and monitored and also validated, e.g., temperature mapping, on a periodic basis. Premises and equipment continued. Qualification and validation should establish and provide documentary evidence that the premises, supporting utilities, equipment, and processes have been designed in accordance with the requirements for GMP, Design Qualification, or DQ. The premises, supporting utilities, and equipment have been built and installed in compliance with their design specifications, Installation Qualification, or IQ. The premises, supporting utilities, and equipment operate in accordance with their design specifications, Operational Qualification, or OQ. A specific process will consistently produce a product that meets its predetermined specifications and quality attributes, Process Validation, or PV, also called Performance Qualification, or PQ. Any aspect of operation, including significant changes to the premises, facilities, equipment, or processes which may affect the quality of the product, directly or indirectly, should be qualified and validated. Particular attention should be paid to the validation of analytical test methods, automated systems, and cleaning procedures. The responsibility for performing validation should be clearly defined. Premises and equipment continued. Data collecting equipment. The GMP guidelines require equipment to be fit for purpose. If the weighing step is critical to product quality, then equipment should be used that will ensure an appropriate level of accuracy. A good practice is to display the usable range on all scales. As a rule of thumb, the minimum weight that the scale interval can introduce should be less than a 0.5% error. This means if a scale can weigh up to 1,000 grams and the scale interval is to 0.1 grams, then the minimum of 20 grams may be weighed on that scale. If the scale rounded to, say, 0.5 gram intervals, then the minimum permissible weight should be 100 grams. The above is only a rule of thumb. All scales should be validated for their intended purpose. Scenario. Dana was required to weigh completed products to ensure that they met specifications. They were supposed to weigh 500 grams plus or minus 2 grams. She first weighed herself on the large scales in the warehouse. These scales were used to weigh packaged goods to determine shipping costs. Dana then held a product and weighed herself again. She calculated the weight of the product by subtracting the second weight from the first. Quick Quiz 3. Select the best answer and click Submit. Select the best answer from below. What should Dana have done? A. She should have repeated the measurements 3 times and calculated the average to ensure the result was accurate. B. She should have requested scales that had a range from 0 to 1 kilograms and displayed X.X grams. C. She should have held 10 products to make the weight more appropriate for the scale, dividing the weight difference by 10 to calculate the final weight of each product. Documentation. Documentation. Documentation is an essential part of manufacturing a product. It performs several functions. It helps the people who make the product by providing them with instructions on the steps to follow so that nothing is left to memory. It shows auditors what the proven process for manufacturing a particular product is and that the process was followed. It provides data for any investigation if there is a problem with a batch of product. It makes sure that everyone, internal and external to the company, knows how a particular product is made and the quality checks that must be performed during manufacture to ensure everything is working as it should. It is used to assess the quality of the product manufactured for release. Documentation types. Documents can be hard copy, electronic, or a hybrid of the two forms. In a manufacturing environment, you will typically need the following types of documents. This may vary according to the type of products manufactured. Specifications both for raw materials and for the finished product, manufacturing formulae and instructions, processing and packaging instructions, procedures and work instructions, records, and site master file. Any of these documents may be reviewed during an audit. Equipment logbooks. The GMP guidance requires logbooks to be kept for major or critical equipment. The following must be recorded in the logbooks: equipment usage, validation activities, calibrations, planned and unplanned maintenance activities, and cleaning. Each entry must be dated and signed by the person who performed the task. Document control. It is a GMP requirement that the documents that control the manufacture of products must be controlled themselves. This prevents mistakes in documents that can impact product quality. Controlled documents must be prepared, reviewed, distributed, and changed using a documented process. Things that go wrong with documents. Here are some examples of things that can go wrong if documents are not controlled. You've probably experienced some of them. If different versions of a document are not identified using a common process, then several different versions of the same document may be in circulation. No one knows which is the right one. If the review process is not formalized, then simple mistakes such as the required temperature for a process may be listed as different values in different documents, e.g. 40 degrees Celsius in a procedure and 44 degrees Celsius on a form for the process. Or the temperature is stated as degrees Celsius, but the temperature measurement is in degrees Fahrenheit. In pharmaceutical manufacturing, temperatures should always be stated and recorded in degrees Celsius. Documentation essentials. The GMP guidelines for documentation state that documents must be approved, dated, and signed by authorized staff, be designed, prepared, reviewed, approved, and distributed using controlled processes, be unambiguous, be regularly reviewed and kept up to date, typically every 2 to 3 years, not have handwritten notes attached, be retained for a predetermined period, and have an inventory of current documents in use. Quick Quiz 4. Select the best answer and click Submit. Pharmaceutical manufacturers must have documented quality procedures covering A. Development and production, B. Production and batch release, C. Distribution and development, D. All of the above. Production. Introduction. The critical aspects of production in a GMP environment are the prevention of cross-contamination in production areas, validation so processes are understood and controlled, starting materials, processing operations, both intermediate and bulk products, packaging materials and operations, production, finished products, and rejected, recovered, and returned materials. GMP, good manufacturing practice, is that part of quality assurance which ensures that products are consistently produced and controlled to the quality standards appropriate to their intended use and as required by the license or marketing authorization. Containment and cross-contamination. Within the production areas of a company, the GMP guidelines focus on preventing contamination, cross-contamination, and mix-ups. GMP guidelines require that you should understand and control all production processes so that you can be sure of the outcomes of those processes. Procedures. Production operations must follow clearly defined and proven procedures. Procedures must comply with GMP principles in order to manufacture products of the required quality. Personnel. People are a major source of product contamination. Access to production areas must be restricted to authorized personnel. Production personnel must be trained in appropriate personal hygiene and clothing procedures, e.g., wearing hairnets and shoe covers. Technical systems such as swipe card access to areas, airlocks, and pressure differentials should also be used to prevent cross-contamination. Labeling. All materials, bulk containers, supplies, and major items of equipment used should be labeled with the product or material name or ID, its strength, the batch number, and the stage of production. Process. The process should be clearly defined materials, equipment used, and personnel involved, and timing of activities must be fully traceable. Have the activities documented in real time by the person performing the tasks. Have secondary verification of critical steps in the process. Quality control. Introduction. The quality control, QC, aspect of a quality management system is concerned with product sampling, testing raw materials and final products against specifications, organization, documentation, product release procedures, ongoing stability program. QC ensures that the necessary and relevant tests are carried out and that materials and products are not released for use, sale, or supply until their quality has been judged satisfactory. QC is not confined to a lab. Quality control should be involved in all decisions which may impact product quality. The independence of quality control from production is considered a fundamental GMP requirement. During the investigation of the Pharmaceuticals case, auditors found that the managing director was signing off QC tests and releasing product from production. The concentration of the active pharmaceutical ingredients in the products varied from 0.1% to 700% of the required concentration. The company was closed down by the TGA. QC is at the core of every process. All quality control procedures should be established, validated, and implemented. Reference samples of materials and products must be kept. Monitoring product stability is a fundamental responsibility of QC. QC must participate in the investigation of complaints related to the quality of the product. QC from start to finish. Quality control runs through manufacturing from start to finish, S to F. It continues after the product has been manufactured. Reference samples of materials and products must be of a size sufficient to permit full release testing to be performed twice, with the exception of sterility testing. Note, the EU also requires that the analytical materials and equipment be available to carry out full testing 1 year past expiry. Testing methods should be validated. Contract manufacture. Introduction. Contract manufacture and analysis must be correctly and completely defined, agreed, and controlled to avoid misunderstandings that could result in a product or work of unsatisfactory quality. A written contract must exist that establishes the duties of each party, specific responsibilities for product release, personnel must be considered and documented. Contract manufacturer. Continued. Responsibilities. Contract giver. The GMP guidelines apply the following responsibilities to the contract giver. The contract giver is responsible for assessing the competence of the contract acceptor to successfully carry out the work required and ensuring that GMP is followed. The contract giver must ensure that all products and materials delivered to them by the contract acceptor comply with their specifications and that the products have been released by an authorized person. The key point here is that it's the contract giver, i.e. the customer, who has the responsibility to ensure that products are manufactured and released according to GMP guidelines. The responsibility cannot be delegated to the contract manufacturer. Contract manufacturer. Continued. Responsibilities. Contract acceptor. The contract acceptor must have adequate premises and equipment, knowledge and experience, and competent personnel to carry out satisfactorily the work ordered by the contract giver. The contract acceptor must ensure that all products or materials delivered are suitable for their intended purpose. The contract acceptor must not pass to a third party any of the work entrusted under the contract without the contract giver's prior evaluation and approval of the arrangements. Complaints and product recall. Responsibilities. There must be a designated person responsible for handling the complaints and deciding the measures to be taken. Complaints and product recall. Continued. Defined procedures. What must happen? Ensure written procedures are available describing the action to be taken, including the need to consider a recall in the case of a complaint concerning a possible product defect. Record all complaints and investigate thoroughly. The investigation details and results, including risk assessment, root cause analysis, and remedial, corrective, and preventative actions, must be recorded, reviewed, and approved by the responsible designated quality staff. Complaints and product recall. Continued. Investigation. If a product defect is discovered or suspected in a batch, other batches must be checked in order to determine whether they were also affected. In particular, other batches which may contain reworks of a defective batch must be investigated. Complaints and product recall. Continued. Record keeping. You must record all the decisions and measures taken as a result of a complaint and reference the corresponding batch records. You must review complaint records regularly for any indication of specific or recurring problems requiring attention and possible recall. Complaints and product recall. Continued. Traceability. Distribution records must be readily available, contain sufficient information on wholesalers and directly supplied customers, including those for exported products and medical samples. Complaints and product recall. Continued. Product reconciliation after a recall. A reconciliation of affected products must be performed to ensure all recalled products have actually been received. Regular audits of the recall process must also occur to evaluate the effectiveness of the process. Quick Quiz 5. Select the best answer and click Submit. All product complaints must be blank and investigated thoroughly. A. Recorded. B. Ignored unless there is a trend. C. Passed on to the appropriate department. D. Recalled immediately. Self-inspection. The following should be evaluated for conformity to QA and GMP principles. Personnel matters, for example, the training system, premises, equipment, calibration records and procedures, documentation, production, quality control, distribution, complaints and recalls, is the distribution list current, and even the self-inspection process. All self-inspections must be recorded. The quality system itself should also be part of the self-inspection program, including deviation investigations, the CAPA system, training document control and archives, quality metrics, etc. Reports must contain all the observations made during the inspections and, where applicable, proposals for corrective measures. A complete follow-up action plan must be adhered to. Progress of the action plan should be regularly monitored to ensure agreed actions are completed. The 10 Golden Rules. Case study: hygiene and cleaning. Despite the emphasis, strict procedures, and training, things sometimes go wrong. These can be predictable, such as things that go wrong as a result of failing to follow written procedures, or unpredictable as a result of contamination from an unexpected source. However, no matter the root cause, such incidents are avoidable. In the examples below, the actions needed to avoid things going wrong should be self-evident. Example 1. Frequent problems of contamination in a clean room by an organism normally found in water and soil, dirt or earth. On investigation, there were 3 contributing factors to the root cause. A. Operators walking out of the clean room wearing their dedicated shoes and then walking back into the clean room without cleaning the shoes or putting on clean overshoes. B. Inadequate cleanup following frequent spillages. C. Inadequate and infrequent cleanup of condensate from a heat exchanger dripping onto the clean room floor. Lessons learned. Dedicated shoes are dedicated to a specific clean room suite and to a specific operator. Operators need to understand why they are wearing them and how contamination can be spread on the feet. Spillage and leakage must be dealt with immediately, not just at the end of the shift or the day or the week. This is not routine cleaning. Example 2. Following a fire alarm in the factory, the clean room operators assembled at the fire assembly point in the parking lot, still wearing their clean room gowns, since the fire regulations require that everyone evacuates the building immediately and does not stop for any reason. The gowns were not changed when the operators returned to work because the gowning procedure only required a daily gown change and did not cover the fire evacuation. This resulted in high levels of microbial contamination, which took a lot of cleaning and monitoring before it was cleared. This demonstrated a lack of awareness of the purpose of the gowning. Lessons learned. Awareness of the concepts of hygiene and gowning and the problems that bad practices can cause is as important as completing the how-to training. Example 3. A clean room operator involved in the manufacture of biological drug substances was also the owner of a small farm and a small dairy herd. He would come to work each day after milking the cows. During the environmental monitoring of the manufacturing areas, a resistant and unusual microorganism was found in high numbers. On investigation, it was found that this organism is normally found on the udders of cows. There have also been examples of organisms that are typically found on dogs, cats, and horses. Lessons learned. Personal hygiene for pharmaceutical personnel, both manufacturing personnel and others who enter manufacturing areas, is important at all times, not just at work. Removing street clothing and regular hand washing in production areas are necessary. Case study: operator error. This case study involves a semi-automated process for protein capture, which involved taking the harvest from a cell culture process that involved protein expression. The harvest was a typical process involving centrifugation to remove the culture medium, lysis of the cells, and capture of the protein that had been expressed using a capture chromatography column. Following capture, the protein was eluted into an eluate tank, and once the protein had been eluted from the column was cleaned with sodium hydroxide solution. The sodium hydroxide was accidentally eluted into the eluate tank with the protein solution, and the entire batch was lost because the sodium hydroxide solution caused hydrolysis and destroyed the protein. It didn't just happen once, but it happened twice before the company took effective action. The automated system should have prevented this error, but the automated process was overridden by the operator. The root cause was determined to be the operator, who was counseled and retrained. However, the retraining of the operator was not sufficient because the same problem occurred again, this time involving a different operator. After the second incident, the company introduced a fix in the software to prevent such an operator intervention without a second operator checking. Was this fix sufficient? The risk still remains because two operators, both with a vested interest in taking a shortcut, could still, together, override the system, and there is a risk, albeit a much smaller risk, that both operators could make the same mistake. The main lesson learned was that while the primary root cause may have been operator error, there was also a secondary root cause, which might also be considered as the primary root cause, and that is that the automation software was not secure. Operators may try to take shortcuts to save time, but may not understand the impact of their shortcuts. The automation was designed to prevent such an error from occurring, but the flaw in the software design was that it could be overridden by the operator. Even an override by two operators is not completely secure. Operators should not be allowed to override an automated process. Any override should only be performed by someone with supervisor or administrator rights and should only be performed under change control or as a planned deviation, or as a temporary approved change to the process. Final assessment. Review the module before commencing your final assessment. All questions relate directly to information and principles covered in the slides. You can only attempt each question once. Question types may include true-false, drag and drop, and multiple choice. Good luck.